Good afternoon. This is your host, John, of the Research Review, still creating a platform to connect and inspire. I'm back here again today with one of the best guests that have appeared on this show and also recent 3-minute thesis winner, Xavier.
Hi, it's great to be back. That you give me way too much credit there.
And it's great to be back with videos as well.
Hello there.
I know you can't see it in the audio, but well, it's good to be back on video.
Yeah.
Now, so besides being the champion 3-minute thesis winner, that is definitely something to be proud of. Give us an update on what you've been doing since the last time that you came on the show.
Yeah, so obviously before then the biggest thing was the 3-minute thesis, which for anyone who's wondering what the heck that is, basically as part of the program that I was in the fall, everyone who was part of it were divided into groups based on major, and we had to deliver a 3-minute thesis that basically explained what our research was all about. And there was a first and second place winner graded by unbiased judges, by professors here at Kent State who weren't part of the department that we were majoring in. Right. So I was put in, they took all the arts kids and put them in together. So it was the theater kids, the music kids, the fashion kids. And I had written my 3-minute thesis. I had memorized the entire thing. I think we were allowed note cards, but I was, me being the theater nerd I am, I was like, I'll just memorize it. It's fine. So I delivered it, and I was talking, like we talked about in the last podcast episode, a bit about, the goals of the work that Dr. Yuko Kurahashi and I were doing. Yeah. Like trying to make it just easier to teach and learn Shakespeare in the classrooms, and with guides of like vocabulary, scene breakdown, famous stagings and adaptations, discussion questions, and a bunch of other stuff. So I had delivered the 3-minute thesis, and we were waiting for the results, and we had gone to like sit in this auditorium and wait to hear what happened. Right. And so they start announcing like some of the second place winners, and then they start announcing the first place. And the first one is, I think, this aeronautics girl who wins it, and then there's like another one. And then the third one they announced was me.
And as soon as I heard that, I started clapping so loud.
Thank you so much. I didn't even know if I was going to like win it or not, and I was like, what? But then they ended up asking some of the first place people to speak again. And I was one of the ones chosen. Right. So then I ended up essentially giving my 3-minute speech again in front of the entire program, which went, I think, really well.
It went so good. Do you have no idea? And I know I was mentioning this to you earlier. I don't know if you were in the zone, or if you scanned the crowd or not. But when you were talking, I was scanning the crowd, and I was like, "Man, these people are engaged.
Thank you so much.
On the edge of their seats, listening to what you're saying. You know what I mean?"
And the big thing I think is, at least with everybody, is that it's just the passion that you bring and showing what kind of good you're trying to do with the different projects that you've done. Right. And for me, I was intent in knowing that like the Shakespeare work that I'm doing now is for good, is that it will help people. Yeah. And that was the hope that I was trying to convey. But after the 3-minute thesis, Dr. K and I, we're like, okay, so what's next? So the big thing about this program as well, the SURE program, is that we have to apply sort of again in the spring for an additional symposium, which is
the spring symposium,
right. But it's like essentially a longer, like 10-minute version, essentially, of like expanding on your research, where you are now, like a semester later, if there's anything you've wanted to like hone in on your research. And so what we're doing as of now regarding that, apart from continuing to expand on what we already have, we wanted to take a little time to examine how Shakespeare has been used for underrepresented voices and groups.
Okay, awesome.
So I think I've mentioned a little bit on the last episode how cultures all around the world have used Shakespeare.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting because I kind of thought it was more of used by Western cultures more, And then I know you said that was something like you were surprised about.
Oh, yeah. Like, I was surprised. Like, it's really popular in places in, like, Japan. Yeah. There's a yearly article in, like, South Africa. And like one of the things that I wanted to do was even hone in on that. And so we've been collecting a whole bunch of different works and like researching them of how they've been done differently. Yeah. And one of the ones that have really interested me was a show from 2019 directed by Kenny Leon, was Much Ado About Nothing. It was an entirely all-black cast, and they used it because Much Ado starts with all of these people returning from this unknown war. And the war's always, throughout the different variations of Much Ado, been, maybe if it's set in, 1918, it could be returning home from World War I.
Right.
It could vary, but they set this essentially in 2020, so it was a year later from when it was produced. And it was a war sort of marching for peace and for rights. It being an all-black cast, they had things of Stacey Abrams' 2020, and as well as sort of modernizing it, incorporating their own kind of music and kind of ditching completely the English accents that I think most people would associate with Shakespeare, and just fitting in to sort of this sort of middle-class all-black community that you would see in Atlanta. And it was really, really great to see. The performances were incredible. I found it online. I don't know if it still is up online because I've had some difficulty finding it on the website I used originally, but high recommendation. It is such a beautifully done show.
That's great. What would I look up to find this again?
You would look up Much Ado About Nothing, directed by Kenny Leon.
By Kenny Leon.
Yes.
Awesome.
High recommendations. And even if, because I think it was on PBS for a while, and then they recently took it off, which I don't know why. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But there's at least clips for sure and different interviews on YouTube. So even if you can't find that, absolutely watch those. It's really a great sight to see.
I definitely will. And yeah, that makes me curious to think, for your open resource book that you were talking about introducing into schools and stuff to get students more engaged in the Shakespeare, do you think it would be good to include modernized versions of his performances like the one you were just mentioning?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, some modern versions were even the famous stagings and adaptations segment for each of the 5 plays that we did. We included some of the more modern ones, to name an example, Macbeth, the Scottish play, or as I like to call it when I'm in a theater, McNuggets, to avoid the curse. But we did the movie version, the Tragedy of Macbeth, which came out not too long ago. I think it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, and it was an entirely black and white movie, and it was incredible.
Wait, it came out 2 or 3 years ago? It was in black and white?
Yeah, they had this entire filter on it. And that's
cool.
It's on Apple TV, I think.
Okay, wait, did it still have, how older movies still have that fuzzy looking-ish feeling? Did it still have that, or was it more still modern but black and white?
It was modern, but the black and white, it was black and white with more modern effects.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it was Denzel Washington who played Macbeth.
Oh no, I have to check this out.
Yeah, it's really great. I'm
99%.
I haven't seen that in a year, but I'm pretty sure that's who played him.
I love Denzel Washington.
He was fantastic in it.
Yeah.
And even just in terms of other modern things, one sort of funny thing that we did was for Kent, both here and in the Trumbull campus, Kent had that year done Much Ado About Nothing, and the Trumbull campus had done Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
So we decided to include them. Obviously, they aren't quite as these famous stagings, but we thought, relatability for what's going on at the college level.
Right.
Since this book is being written for high school and collegiate classes. And one of the things also that I think is neat about Shakespeare on that note is that because obviously a lot of people will think that Shakespeare is this set in stone way of how you have to do it.
Right.
But what I think a lot of people don't realize about Shakespeare, and kind of the benefit of the fact that he's 400 years old plus, is that he's very malleable. You can change a lot of things to help, bolster support for different groups without changing the core of the story.
Right.
And the example I'll use with Much Ado, what we did here at Kent State last spring, the play ends, spoiler alert for a 400-year play, is that it essentially ends that there's these 2 characters, Claudio and Hero. In the original story, Claudio thought Hero was cheating on him based on the lies of a person who was known as a liar. But essentially Hero ends up faking her death to like guilt him and show him like how terrible of a person he was, which he was a terrible person.
Yeah.
And they end up getting back together and remarried. This time we change the story so that hero walks away from him, and to show that no, you don't get to say, "Oh, I'm sorry," and all is forgiven. Like, you slandered me publicly. And we changed the setting of it, too, to sort of like, I don't know if you've seen Gossip Girl.
Yeah, I've seen Gossip Girl.
It was basically Gossip Girl
Gossip
setting,
Girl.
that Upper East Manhattan, New York. But it was really, really interesting because I don't think there's a single person who went, "That's not much ado about nothing." That absolutely was, but it told a different like segment of the story for a different character to give up, and say, that this isn't something that is going to be okay. And I think that Shakespeare is someone who can change with the times and change to tell the story you want to tell for different people.
Yeah.
And you can do it because there's not really a wrong way to do Shakespeare.
Right.
You might see a production of Shakespeare and think that was a bad production, but it's not a wrong way to do it.
Yeah, and there's really not like a wrong way to play the character.
Right, exactly. And I think that's a big beauty about Shakespeare that not a lot of people realize because they're so stuck on like the classic original like Knights of Old type of thing. And it doesn't always have to be that.
When you first brought up to me Shakespeare, that's the Shakespeare that I had in my mind. And that was the Shakespeare that was taught to me, I think, in school as well too. I didn't realize it was so broad. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And I didn't realize there were so many variations of it. It's really made me interested in it. And I think it's too, now that you're expanding your research to see all the different kinds of how it's been modified by different groups of people, I think that's really going to take off. I think a lot of people are going to be like, "Wow, this is interesting. This is more relatable to a lot of people."
And that's exactly the hope, is we want to show that like, and another one we're doing is like we're researching into like an entirely indigenous people's cast of Othello.
Yeah.
And like
what's Othello?
Othello
I'm not
is
familiar with that.
Othello is, we don't cover, that's one of the ones we didn't cover, but we're referencing for that particular reason. Othello is the story of a black man who essentially is rising through the ranks, and another, like a servant of his, essentially, like not servant, it's more like under him military wise,
Right.
Named Iago, who essentially gets jealous because Othello has the beautiful girl, has this great position, and like is a genuinely good man, and Iago's like, "I'm jealous of you." And like he essentially is a saboteur to Othello. He makes him doubt his wife Desdemona's love for him. He basically isolates him from everybody, and it just ends in tragedy.
Yeah.
Hence the tragedy of Othello. But again, it's this unique take of like that, and we're still doing some research into this one, and I'm trying to set up an interview with the director who did it.
Really? How is that going to be hard to contact him?
I mean, she's actually got her email that was connected to it, so I'm going to be sending her an email and be like, "Hey,
Fingers crossed.
Hope for the best."
Yeah.
But like as I was reading on it, it was just this idea of like the invasion of like land, and like this idea of colonialization, as I understood it, and like expanding on that with this cast, and it was really, really interesting to read. And I think again that's the hope, is to showing that it isn't just this rigid set in stone thing, that Shakespeare can be relatable and accessible to anybody, because the important thing about Shakespeare isn't necessarily all the time of who is doing what, but the core values, the core humanity that Shakespeare shows, that no matter who you are, like you can feel things of greed, of love, of pride and honor, and comedy and tragedy, smiles and tears, that these core human values, the things that make us human, are felt and done by everybody.
Wow. And that's what's so beautiful about this kind of work, you know what I mean? It's so beautiful about it. And that's probably why it's been so popular for 400 years, you know? And why it's going to be so popular years and years in the future. Now, I know you said earlier that you're actually working on your own play?
Yes. So one of the things that you have to do as a senior is what's known as a capstone project.
Right.
Now, someone then later asked me, "Why didn't you just make this as your capstone project?" And boy, would I have thought of that sooner. But
I'm glad you're doing your own thing.
No, it was really cool because A Midsummer Night's Dream is probably my favorite Shakespeare play. But I always thought
I
that
thought you liked King Lear.
I like King Lear too. I like a lot of them, but I have a very certain fondness for A Midsummer Night's Dream.
Okay. Why's that?
It was actually the first Shakespeare play I ever performed in, where I was the character of Nick Bottom, who is this comical, lovable idiot in like every possible regard. He gets turned into he's the famous character that gets his head turned into a donkey. And, like, gets swept up in this whole commotion with fairies.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is happening to this guy? And he's just taking it in stride. And he was so much fun to play and just so much fun to be. And I fell in love with the story. But I always felt... Because Midsummer Night's Dream is interesting because it's essentially 4 stories in one. Because you have the main story of essentially these 4 lovers who are these teenagers who are in love. There's like Hermia, Lysander, Helena, and Demetrius.
Yeah.
Hermia and Lysander are in love. Demetrius is in love with Hermia, and Helena, Hermia's best friend, is in love with Demetrius.
That sounds like some drama.
Oh, it gets better because there's this guy Aegeus, who's Hermia's dad. He does not like Lysander and wants Hermia to marry Demetrius.
Really?
So he basically goes to Theseus, the Duke, and who is another story of him and Hippolyta getting married at this time, and goes, hey, the law says that I can tell my daughter who to marry or she can die, so can you invoke that? And Theseus is like, okay, I guess. And he's like, I mean, Hermia, you either marry Demetrius, you become a nun, or you've got to die. I'm sorry, that's the law. I don't make the rules, I just enforce them.
Yeah.
So Hermia and Lysander run off. Helena, they tell Helena, and Helena's like, I know Hermia's my best friend, but I like Demetrius. So if I tell him, maybe that'll get me favor with him.
Yeah.
She really sells out her best friend for some guy she's got a crush on. So she tells Demetrius, and he runs off after them, and she runs off after him. Those are the first 2 main stories. The third story involves these fairies, which is Oberon, the king of the fairies, and Titania, the queen of the fairies.
Yeah.
They are fighting over this changeling boy. Titania saying,
What's
hey...
a changeling boy?
It's sort of like this mythical fairy type that basically, way, way back in history, a changeling boy would be someone that fairies would come and sneak into someone's house of like a newborn child and swap the babies. Like, so if someone was just newly born, they would take the child and place it with essentially a fake one that was like this weird fairy boy.
Yeah, kind of like a stork in a way.
It's actually not too far off in that way. And it was this very, like, kind of terrifying, horrifying thing. Because I think when you think fairies nowadays, you think of, like, Tinkerbell from Disney.
Right.
Fairies, way back when, were these terrifying, horrifying creatures that you did not mess... Yeah, you did not mess with fairies. And even in cultures that still today, of you do not mess with the fae in any regard. I think it's very common in Ireland, I believe. I might be wrong about that.
No, you're right, yeah.
But, like, it's very much a case of if you offend a fairy, you are going to regret it. And if you walk away, you will be lucky.
Yeah. Are they regarded as, like, still, like, real entities in a lot of cultures?
In a lot of cultures, yeah. They are still regarded as real, that, like, there is a lot of respect for the fae and belief in them.
Yeah. That's cool.
It's died down significantly since then, but they still have a very active presence in a lot of cultures. But basically, they're fighting because Titania has taken this changeling boy and essentially sees him as like this child that like of her own that she got from this mother who died that she was friends with.
Right.
And Oberon is like, well, no. I want the changeling boy because I want another servant.
Yeah.
So they're fighting over, like, this boy. And so they're, like, not on speaking terms. And basically the 4th story is what's known as the Rude Mechanicals, which is this acting troupe. And because it's Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding, they are hosting, like, these different events that could be done in honor of their celebration. And these actors are like, we should do a play. And they're trying to rehearse this play called Pyramus and Thisbe, which is was a heavy inspiration for Romeo and Juliet. And the main character, Pyramus, is played by Bottom, who is a complete egotistical, like if you were to think dramatic posing, acting, huzzah! That's Bottom. That's Bottom entirely.
Uh-huh.
He is the man who uses big words to make himself sound photosynthesis.
Interesting.
But essentially, at some point or other, all four of these stories end up intertwining and connecting.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was really interesting to see how they do. But I always felt that the lovers probably get the biggest, maybe next to the fairies, of like the two biggest. And I always felt that the mechanicals were not utilized to a point that they could have been.
Yeah.
Like, Bottom gets utilized quite a bit. There's a little bit of characterization for two other characters named Peter Quince and Flute. But, like, there's 6 of them, and there's not a whole bunch done with them except for the final bit where they do the play. And it's terrible, but it's funny. So I ended up writing this story for my capstone because most people for their capstone in the theater department will do things like they'll help with a main stage show, they'll do their own student-run black box show.
What's a black box show?
So there's a black box show is a specific kind of show where it's usually a smaller or more experimental kind of show in what's known as a black box theater, which is hence the name, just a giant black box. And it's really helpful for people who are very like minimal in the things they want or they need.
Yeah.
And we actually have one in Kent, which is where currently right now they're rehearsing for a collection of student plays that will, I think, be performed in April. I don't remember the exact dates.
Interesting.
But, you know, that's something that's commonly done. But I was like, you know, I have this idea for a story as a follow-up that expands more on the mechanicals.
Yeah.
So I wanted to do that. The basic outline of it is that it's really following the fairies and the mechanicals. So the mechanicals get called into Theseus. This is like the day after they present their play, and it sure happens. And Theseus comes up and he's like, hey, look, so you guys did the play, and that's great. But you're kind of being ridiculed throughout all of Athens because you were so bad at it. And we feel bad because we asked you to do this.
Yeah.
So we're going to give you 2 weeks to create a whole new play and perform it for us. And then hopefully you can essentially redeem yourself so Athens doesn't look at you like a bunch of nincompoops who are incapable of anything.
So your play, the thing you're writing, it's like a play within a play. In a sense?
Sort of. So, like, it's a direct sequel. It immediately follows the very end of another play. It's ironically titled A Midsummer Day's Awakening.
Yeah.
But there will be a play within that play because the very end, the second to last scene is them performing another play. So it will be a play within a play.
That's going to be interesting.
Thank you. But basically, Bottom, through his shenanigans, convinces Theseus that we don't need 2 weeks. We can do it in 2 days.
Yeah.
So Theseus is like, all right, you could do that. Have fun. And obviously the rest of the mechanicals are like, really? But they head off to go write their own show. Meanwhile, the fairies, the way, spoiler alert again for another 400-year play, Midsummer Night's Dream, the biggest thing with the fairies is Oberon, to get the child, convinces his servant Puck to get this magical, like, love liquid and, like, pours it into Titania's sleeping eye so that she falls in love with the first thing she sees, which is, in the show, Nick Bottom as a donkey. And while she's infatuated with him, he takes the baby. Now, at the end of the show, he removes the potion and they get back together. But I always wondered, so what happened when she found out that he took the baby? So what this starts off is she has just found out and she is livid. And she's basically on the verge of declaring war on him because they have their own separate servants and followers.
Yeah.
So Oberon's like, okay, this is bad. Puck, you take the baby, go hide it, and I'm going to try and not cause a war within the fairy community, essentially. And so Puck goes out to this hidden grove that's close enough to human civilizations that fairies won't approach it, but far enough away from the outskirts of the city that for no reason would any human be out here.
Right.
So enter the mechanicals who come out here because they're rehearsing this new play that Peter Quince has written, known as The Tragedy of Oedipus Rex.
Tragedy of Oedipus Rex.
Which is literally a basic ripoff of the actual Oedipus Rex story. And as they're rehearsing, there is a scene where it calls for a baby. And they're like, well, we can't play baby. We're all too old. So Quince is like, you know what? We can just wrap up some rocks and sticks in a scarf, and that'll do. We're on a budget. Bottom go into the woods and get some rocks and sticks.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom goes into the woods and finds the baby. Now, any normal person in this instance would probably go to, like, the authorities and be like, hey, we found this child in the woods by himself.
Yeah.
And Bottom goes, wait, guys. Our play needs a baby. And we've got a baby right here.
When an opportunity presents
When
itself,
the
you gotta
opportunity
take it.
presents. So Bottom's logic to convince them is, listen, we're going to perform this in front of Athens anyway.
Mm-hmm.
The parents are probably in Athens. We'll just perform it from the baby and find the parents that way. And they're
Yeah.
like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And Puck comes back and realizes, oh, God, I've made a terrible mistake. So the hilarity of the rest of the play is Oberon and Titania sort of butting heads while both trying to get the baby back from the mechanicals while the mechanicals are trying to rehearse and perform this play.
Yeah.
So that's the hilarity of it.
That's interesting. That's going to be really cool.
Thank
So
you.
wait, everything you just explained, that's kind of like your own idea off of...
Mhm.
That's incredible.
Thank
That's
you so much.
fantastic. Yeah, you literally just like have the whole script like in your mind.
Yeah,
And-
it's all written. I hosted with a couple close friends a read-through of it, and they really liked it.
Yeah.
And I was glad because I was like, well, you don't hate it. That's a win.
No, I think that was like really incredible, honestly. So are you getting a cast together to perform this?
So performing it's a little tricky.
Okay.
Right now, what I'm doing is I'm getting everything copyright like as we speak. Like the copyright process is already underway.
So it's kind of like legally yours.
Yes.
Okay.
And the idea is that I'm going to publish it on a site called New Play Exchange.
Yeah.
Which is a big site for like up and coming new plays, things to find for like monologues or scenes.
Yeah.
And I'm going to send it out to a bunch of different places and be like, hey, are you interested in doing something new that's Shakespeare but not? Well,
Awesome.
have I got something for you?
Yeah.
But like, this has been just like such a big project that I would love to see it get produced at some kind of level.
I think there would be a lot of people actually here interested in doing it. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. There's even, I had an idea of possibly, because they've already selected the main stage shows for next year.
Yeah.
But the year after being like, because they do a Shakespeare-esque show on the regular, like every other year or so. And me going, hey, you interested? Because Kent State has done alumni shows before. We
Right.
recently did, what was it? It was a show called Chaining Zero, which I think won some kind of award or something.
Uh-huh.
That was an entirely alumni show, so fingers crossed there.
Fingers crossed. That's awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, and definitely, I think too, when you're trying to get people to take interest in the play, also like present it vocally. You know what I mean? Because like that's an ability that you have. I think a lot of other people behind the scenes don't.
Thank
that
you.
can really give you the competitive advantage. You know.
Thank you so much.
You do a seriously good job at getting people interested, getting people engaged, getting people excited about your ideas.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I have to try it, Shakespeare.
Yeah, and you do a great job at it. You know,
Thank
I
you.
think it matters how good your ideas are, but what matters more is how you communicate those ideas.
Right.
It's same thing like within sales. You could be selling shower curtain rings as earrings, and if you can convince people that this is the next big thing, then people will buy them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, but you could have, say, these beautiful diamond earrings. If you don't know how to communicate why you should wear, if you can't sell them properly, then no one's going to buy them. People would rather buy the shower curtain rings.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, you have the phenomenal communication and sales skills to communicate a phenomenal product as well. So like those two gold settings, that's going to take you, you know?
Thank you so much. Hey, I hope so.
That's great. So I know you were talking a little bit, capitalizing on like your communication skills and everything. You said that for the 3-minute thesis, you memorized it.
Yeah.
And you didn't use note cards as well. I memorized mine as well. But when I went into the DI hub, they had where you go in and the people at LaunchNet would help you write your 3-minute thesis or help with presenting the 3-minute thesis. They told me, they said, don't memorize it. They said don't.
Really?
They said don't memorize it. And then someone else told me too that I think it was my my mentor, my mentor for the SURE program. She told me that Yeah, my mentor, Dr. Amy Ward, for the SURE program. She told me that she was watching someone present their research. This was back when she was getting her PhD.
Mm-hmm.
She hopped up on stage, not my professor, but one of the people like in her class or something.
Right.
Hopped up on stage and just completely blanked,
Mm-hmm.
and said she memorized it, but it's just that when she got up there in front of all those people, she just completely blanked and forgot all about it. And thankfully, we didn't do that.
Thankfully.
Yeah. But I thought the people at the DI Hub at LaunchNet, they said to take bullet points, like bullet point the major topics of what you're talking about. And then as long as you know your concept well enough, just like elaborate on those.
Mm-hmm.
But I like memorizing it better.
Oh, I do too.
I personally like, you feel more prepared.
Mm-hmm.
It gets rid of ums and likes and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it's 3 minutes, you know what I mean? If you rehearse it, you're confident enough within yourself, then why not just memorize it?
You're going to be fine.
Yeah.
I guess I going off of that story, which is like, don't memorize it in case you end up blanking. Mm-hmm. But like you said perfectly, like that preparation. And I think it might even just be a factor of, it goes different from you rehearsing in your room to suddenly seeing so many people watching you specifically do it that like the nerves will get to you there. But like just taking that preparation, being able to remain calm, I think really, even if like you have just a note card to like get up that bullet point, like if you've got everything memorized and timed out, and that's another thing I'm sure you would agree of why I like to memorize, is that you've got things timed out so you aren't accidentally going over.
Yes. Yeah, that's another big thing too. They'll show like a yellow card when you have a minute left, and then they'll show a red card like when you have 10 seconds left.
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm. One mistake that I did make during my 3-minute thesis was when I practiced, I could not set a solid rhythm on the words per minute I was speaking. Mm-hmm. There would be occasionally times where I would record myself and I would go above 3 minutes, and there would be times where I'd go below 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And when I was presenting in the 3-minute thesis competition, I said everything accurately, but I ran out of things to say when they showed the red card, 10 seconds left to go, and I had to make something up on the spot. That would be my one mistake. Mm-hmm. I think memorize it enough where you can still memorize your script, but be prepared to improvise.
Oh, yeah.
Because there are mistakes that could happen, and you want to be able to stay on your toes and be prepared in case something like that happens.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's also just a case of memorizing the things that are most important. Something like an opener, something like a closer, specific sentences or points you want to make.
Yeah.
Like the thing that I had said as an opening was like, to be or not to be. Does anyone really know what that means? Immediately like snagging it and then just ending it with, I don't even remember now what my final thing was, but I just remember making this important sentence to just end it on, is that important start, that important end, and memorizing what it is you need and want to talk about, and then just pacing yourself from there. I probably rehearsed it dozens of times to try and just get the timing down. Because like you said, I kept either being really under or really over a lot, and it was like, please.
You can't find that middle ground, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, so so to get it right on the dot, that's what you would say is just to keep rehearsing.
Yeah, just keep on rehearsing. Like, right. And I do have a bit of a benefit being a theater major, right? That I'm used to this. Mm-hmm. This is the kind of thing that I want to pursue further in my actual career.
Right.
So me not being good at it would be slightly concerning. But even just for anybody wanting to do something like that, is that memorize it to a point where you're comfortable. And I think that's the biggest thing, is just be comfortable. Is a lot of people, I feel, go up there thinking that people are going to judge you. And maybe there's one or two people who are judging you, but
well, they are judges.
They are judges. But And maybe like someone who's got nothing better to do and is really upset with their life and they're like, I'm going to judge. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
But like for the most part, people are there to actively support you and see what
Right.
you've been working on. And just having that knowledge of knowing that these people aren't, it's not you versus them. They are on your side.
Right.
Is that comfort of like, you're talking with a friend.
Yeah, exactly. I love sitting through that I love going to conferences and stuff, and I like going to presentations where I'm not even competing. I'm just sitting there. I just like hanging out and listening to everyone's ideas, you know? That's exactly what it is. That's exactly why I like the podcast.
Right.
I just like hanging out, listening to intelligent, creative people and hearing all the new ideas and getting inspired from what people have to say.
And like some of the people that you've had on your podcast are absolutely incredible.
Oh yeah, man! The guests that I've had, my podcast conversations have been some of the most insightful conversations that I have had while in college. Sitting here in this studio with no phone, computer, anything, just two people talking with a microphone in our face, you know. But it's been some of the most insightful, and I've learned so much. I've learned so much from having people like yourself on here.
Thank you. I mean, I've been listening to the other episodes, and some stuff I would have never even dreamed of, and some stuff like I'm not even comprehending this beforehand, but now I'm like getting it, and it's great.
Yeah.
And like you said, just having this platform that, you know, the more knowledge you can expand to like just other people, like the more it just grows and more connections you make, and the more you can just understand just that little bit more about the world, that really just expanding your own knowledge as well is like such a beautiful thing.
Right. It is. And, you know, I want people to get more, I want incoming students to get more interested in research because the people that come on the show, they do a very good idea of communicating their work and not making it intimidating, bringing it to a level where people can understand. And then incoming students, and then they share what they've learned from it, and they share how they've improved from the research experience itself. And then incoming students can listen to this. They'll get excited, and they'll be like, look at all this, look at everything that this person's accomplished. I'm sure there's been people who've heard your episodes is going to hear this one too. And they're going to be, look at everything that Xavier's accomplished. Look at this play he's writing. I couldn't even imagine doing something like that, but like now I know it's possible. And this guy's a role model to me. And that encourages them to start something of their own and to hopefully get involved in the research process or some creative endeavor, some independent endeavor. And it really inspires people. It inspires me, it inspires other guests, it inspires our whole audience, you know?
And I think also, like, the reason I like, if people are going to ask me, it's like, so Xavier, which did you like more, college or high school? I'll say college every time because apart from the fact that I made so many amazing friends in college, college gives you so much more freedom to just experiment with what you love. Like, you're not stuck doing core classes. I mean, you have to do core classes in college too, but you get those out of the way and you're fine.
Right.
But like in high school, it's like this set, rigid structure. And in college, you have so much more freedom. And I've seen a lot of people that just think they've just got to keep going through it. But like college has so many ways to just branch out and do something you either would have never thought of or that like you just can expand into an area that you just genuinely enjoy. And even you don't even necessarily need college for that. Just get the chance to meet new people and try doing new things. Like I would have, if I didn't meet Dr. K, I don't think, or Paul Hurley. Paul is another professor here at Kent who's been helping me extensively with my play. If I hadn't met either of them, I don't know if I would have been able to do the things that I've been able to accomplish so far.
Exactly.
So it's really those connections and just branching yourself out and not being afraid to break some sort of structure because there is no more structure after high school. Life is whatever you choose to make it.
It is, and it can be whatever you make it as long as you surround yourself with supportive people.
Right, exactly.
Supportive, positive people. And that's why I really like doing this. I get to surround myself with people like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's great. If you had one more piece of advice for anyone, what would it be?
Even in times when you feel that the world is against you and that time isn't on your side or a million XYZ, it never hurts to try. And it's always worth trying because no matter what idea it is you have, maybe you want to be a rock star, maybe you want to be the greatest professor ever known, maybe you want to be X, Y, or Z, that it is better to give it your best shot, try it, and if it fails, you can say, at least I tried. Like, I would rather go out trying to do my dream and failing miserably, like in the ground, done, than living my life always asking, what if I had made it? And that's a big reason why I'm a theater performer, is that I genuinely enjoy making people smile. It's something that I've always loved doing. I do it with performing. When I did the Shakespeare project, I want to make it more accessible to people so they can enjoy it. With my play, that it's a comedy that people can laugh at. That I've always enjoyed that, and why I want to go as far as I can with it. And I mean, I have a pre-law and philosophy double minor, so, you know, if it fails miserably, I could probably work as a clerk somewhere.
Right, you got your backup plan.
But I can definitely say that I am going out, that I'm going to live my life without any regrets. And I think that's the best way, is that no matter what you have, if there's even a minuscule fraction of a chance that you can do it, go for it.
Yeah. That was beautiful. And you do a fantastic job of what you just described.
Thank
you. You made me smile today.
Let's go!
So, you know, that's a win. That's a win.
That is always a win.
And always a win for me having you on the show. Always
Thank
a win
you.
for everyone having you on the show. I think you're really inspiring a lot of people, and you're doing fantastic work.
Thank
so
you.
please keep it up and continuing to make
Yes.
people smile every single day.
Thank you. And I love being on the show. This show is great. You keep it up. I love listening to these episodes. They're fantastic.
Thank you. I love having them. Like I said, I've learned so much.
Not sponsored, but watch more of the research review.
Yeah.
Not sponsored, but sponsored.
Research Review sponsored by the Research Review.
Yeah. Wait.
A little paradox. Well, again, Xavier, it's been awesome having you on this show. You're welcome back any single time. Literally, just shoot me a text.
Thank you so
We could
much.
literally have a whole series with you. Like, you were just like packed with knowledge.
Thank you.
Again, this is your host, John, of the Research Review, creating a platform to inspire. Peace out.